Hey guys, Tyler from Meeple Mountain here with another board game review and tutorial. Today we have Moonrakers from IV Studios, and I'm excited to showcase this game to you guys and walk you through a game that I think is really intricate and unique. It mixes two of my favorite game components together, which is deck building with social deduction, bluffing, loose alliances, contracts, that kind of thing. And I just love the merger that IV has brought to this game, and I think you will too. So let's go ahead and jump in and check out this sci-fi deck building adventure with just a hint of treachery and see what you guys think. Let's jump in and learn how to play Moonrakers. Moonrakers is a competitive victory point collection game for 1 to 5 players where you take on the role of an upstart shipwright captain who is looking to become leader of this organization known as the Moonrakers. This group has lots of various fractured groups, splintered factions within it, and to coordinate them, to consolidate them, you are going to need a lot of influence. People are going to need to know who you are. So this game sets you into the role of a captain attempting to gain the most prestige before other players so that you can claim the role of leader of the Moonrakers. You go about this collecting prestige by completing contracts predominantly. Contracts are broken into 4 types. There are kill contracts, exploration, rescue, and delivery contracts. Each of these have different requirements and different difficulty levels that vary the rewards from prestige to credits and sometimes even additional cards that will be going into your deck. The other way that you can gain prestige through the game is by completing objectives. Objectives are incredibly varied and have all sorts of requirements. They can be things such as actually helping fail a contract as an ally, having lots of various ship type components onto your vessel, having amassed a great wealth of credits, or just a various amount of different types of things. Through these actions of completing contracts, completing objectives, you're working to gain prestige and get to 10 before your opponents do. This will trigger the end of the game. Now, as I mentioned at the intro, this is a deck building game, and so Moonrakers is composed of players building up their ship through various components that will upgrade how they play, and building cards into their deck as well. There are 6 types of cards in the action deck that you can add into your hand. There are misses, which are usually bad, reactors, thrusters, damage in 3 various levels, shields, and then crew members. Crew members are a little bit asymmetric and have various functions, but predominantly these crew members just are empowered or unique versions of your 5 basic types of cards. As I mentioned, there are also ship components. These have trigger requirements based on the cards that are in your hand and provide unique special abilities. You can have 4 of these equipped on your ship at any given time. Now, because this is a deck builder, each player starts the game with a standard set of 10 action cards that are the same for every player. Their breakdown is listed here on your player board, but basically it's going to consist of 3 reactors, 2 thrusters, 2 damage 1s, 2 shields, and a miss. Just like every deck builder, there's a little bit of bad in your deck, but you can turn that into a lot of good if you get the right ship components or crew. Now, as I mentioned, every player will start with the same hand and will be working through rounds of play as they attempt to take on various contracts and complete them to gain prestige. But these contracts are quite challenging, and oftentimes you're going to need assistance from other players. So a lot of Moonrakers is broken down into negotiation, where you are trying to wheel and deal the requirements of the rewards of your cards and divvy them out to entice people to become your allies to gain access to their cards, but allies aren't really guaranteed to help you succeed. They're not forced to play the cards that you need, and so you're going to make sure, or want to make sure, that the reward is enticing enough that they're not going to want to help you fail your contract as you go. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk a little bit about turn order, and then look at the contracts and what kind of requirements they lay out for you on your turn. Contracts are where the meat of the gameplay of Moonrakers comes into effect. It's here that you will be negotiating with fellow captains for their assistance and gaining the majority, the bulk of your prestige, your credits, and everything else throughout the game. A round of Moonrakers is played effectively where a player whose turn it is becomes the mission leader. They can choose a few various actions, but predominantly they are going to choose a contract from the available contracts on the board, and they are going to work to complete this contract. Now, you are never obligated to bring allies. You can solo contracts if you believe you are able to do so, but they are quite challenging, and oftentimes, especially at the onset of the game, you're going to need to bring allies and assistants to complete this quest. Now, there's no limit to the number of allies that you can bring, but of course, most of these allies that come with you aren't going to do this for free. They're going to want some form of reward listed on the card. So let's look a little bit at the anatomy of a card. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 types of missions, of contracts, laid out by color. Again, we have kill contracts that are orange, exploration that are blue, rescue that are green, and delivery that are gold. Now, the type of contract is predominantly necessary for various quests or objectives that you'll be looking to complete, but they also denote generally a type of card that is going to be heavily required on that form of contract. For instance, exploration missions are not usually going to require damage or nearly as many damage cards as kill contracts, whereas delivery may oftentimes need crew, so on and so forth. So if we look at, say, this contract here, this Core World Ace, we can see that on the top right, we have the rewards of that contract. This diamond here that is white is how many prestige it awards. Next is credits, and then the bottom is bonus cards that you could actually add to your deck. So for instance, if we were looking at this green escape pods mission, we can see that it awards 2 prestige and 7 credits. At the bottom, we can see the requirements in cards, which is, in this case, for this kill contract would be 5 damage, and we can see the number of hazard dice or difficulty of the contract here, which ranges from 1 all the way to something like this contract, which is a 4. So if I covered this up here, we can see that a 4 contract is quite demanding, but the rewards are incredible. This is half of the prestige that you need to win the game, but it's highly unlikely that you'd ever be able to solo a level 4 contract. So you'd have to split up those rewards. Now, let's say that I wanted to take on this exploration mission at level 2. I can see that it means I need 4 reactor cards and 4 thruster cards. Again, that's a tall order for a single player to complete, so I might want to bring help. Now, if I wanted to reach out to the table and look for an ally, I could offer them some of the rewards listed on this card. Now we see again, I'm getting 2 prestige and 7 credits. I could say, hey, I would like assistance on this mission. I will give whoever assists me 5 credits, 5 of the 7 credits that would be rewarded. So I would be wanting to take the 2 prestige and the remaining 2 credits, but I would offer 5 of those credits to another player. Now, a player could accept that offer or could counter offer. They could say, no, actually, I don't want the credits. I want 1 of the prestige, or I want 2 of the prestige. You can have the credits. And you can wheel and deal. And usually I've found in games it's best to have some form of a timer on these negotiations as they can go quite long. But if you come to an agreement, then you can undertake this mission. But if you don't, that mission, you can either choose to solo it, or you can look for a different contract to undertake and again look for assistance. You can do this twice, and then eventually you'll either need to choose to stay at base, attempt to solo a contract, or move on with your turn in some other form or fashion. But usually, if you're generous or fair in your contracts, you'll be able to find allies readily at the table, as forming alliances and getting things accomplished outside of your turn really are key to cycling your deck and also getting the credits that you need to buy ship components or crew to level up your personal deck, as well as potentially snag some prestige as you go. Of course, with any kind of a deduction game, whoever is in the lead is usually less key to be given prestige or asked to be allies on missions. And so with the table working, there can be some really interesting catch-up mechanics that happen throughout the game as you're attempting to ally with the person in last place to keep them in the game, and of course, keep the person who's winning at bay. Now, again, as I mentioned, contracts are one of the two main ways that you complete and gain prestige. You also have contracts that traditionally, or objectives, excuse me, that are traditionally awarding 1 point as well. Those will come into play over the course of the game, and those will be secret. So between contracts and objectives, those are the two ways that you will be working to gain prestige throughout a game of Moonrakers. So let's talk a little bit, as we noticed that there are different card requirements. Let's talk in detail about the types of cards that can be in your deck, what they do, and what you can expect as you play through a round of Moonrakers. Now, as I mentioned before, Moonrakers is a deck building game, so at the start of the game, you are going to have a basic set of 10 cards, and every turn you will draw 5 of them, and that will be your active hand, whether you're the mission leader or potentially an ally. Whenever you go on a mission as an ally or a leader, you'll play the cards that you're able to play or want to play, and then you'll discard the rest and draw back into a new hand of 5. So you'll always be starting a turn, whether your own or another player's, with 5 of the cards that are available. And as I mentioned, there are 5 main types of cards, and then there is also a separate deck of crew cards. And I'll move some of these out here so you can see a few of them as well. Now, let's talk about each of the types of cards and what you can expect. Misses are traditionally a system error, and they don't offer much in the way of aid. There are particular ship components that require misses, as well as certain crew. So you can spec into utilizing them, but traditionally they're just a bad thing to have. Now, reactors give you +2 actions. So let's talk about actions for a moment. When you're on a contract, let's say we were on this contract here that requires damage and shields. A player starts their turn with a single action. That means they can play 1 card from their hand, and that's it. They're done. The only way to gain more actions is to play reactor cards. So you'll want to make sure that you have reactor cards in your hand so that you are able to gain additional actions. So, of course, by playing this reactor, now I have 2 additional cards that I could play. So not only would this reactor satisfy a reactor requirement, such as this one here on this claim bounty, where it needs 2 reactors to be played, you gain the benefit as well as meeting the requirement for that contract. You now have 2 additional actions, 2 additional cards that you can play. So reactors are key to really any strategy in the game of Moonrakers. Next, we have thrusters. Thrusters allow you to draw additional cards. So as I mentioned, you start the game with, or every turn with 5 cards in hand. If you play a thruster, you would have 2 more cards. This opens up more options for you and enables you to have the right card that you need for a mission. Again, thrusters are key to a lot of contract requirements as well, but having extra cards is never a bad idea. Damage, again, is solely for the requirement of meeting mission objectives, so it comes in 3 various types: damage 1, 2, or 3. Now, again, if we revisit this bounty card, we see that it needs 3 damage. That could be 3 1s, a 1 and a 2, or a 3. It does not need to be individual cards, just an amount of damage equal to the listed amount on the contract. So damage cards, you want to make sure you're getting the most powerful versions quickly into your deck so that you can meet those more demanding requirements. Finally, we see that we have shields. Now, certain contracts do require shields to be played, but they block a hazard. So we haven't talked about hazards yet, but there are these wonderful things called hazard dice. The difficulty of the mission, ranging from 1 to 4, the contract, lists how many hazard dice need to be rolled. Let's say we had a level 2 contract. That means that we need to roll 2 hazard dice. Now, they have 2 blanks, 2 1s, and 2 2-sided hazards on each hazard dice. When these are rolled, they will show you how many prestige you stand to lose if you do not block these hazards with shields. So if I completed a contract but had no shields, I would lose 3 prestige. So it is possible in a game of Moonrakers to complete a contract and actually go down in prestige because of the hazard dice. So you'll want to make sure that you have shields available to block the hazards. Now, one of the many negotiating aspects of the game is, along with rewards, you can also negotiate how you take or split hazard dice. Now, you couldn't say, hey, I'm going to roll these and see where the hazards are, and I'm going to give you 2, but you could say, hey, I'm going to take I'm going to roll both of these hazard dice. I'm going to take on the risk. All I need is you to play the cards, which can be a powerful negotiating chip. Or you could say, hey, let's split the hazard dice, 1 and 1. And so say maybe I rolled a blank, which is great for me, and my opponent, who was an ally in this case, rolled 2. Well, that's unfortunate. I can't really do much about them taking on that 2 hazard. That's just a bit of the risk of taking on a hazard dice. So shields allow you to protect and insulate against the potential prestige loss of hazard dice. Now, as I mentioned before, we have crew. Crew are broken into various types corresponding to kind of what they sync up to or require. They're broken down into 4 various types here, or 5 various types here, I should say. They have a cost in the bottom left in credits, which is how many credits you need to pay to add them to your deck. And then they have a special action that when you play them, you can activate that particular ability. So we see here that this pilot card would allow us to actually trash cards from our hand. So it's a way to get these misses or cards that we don't want out of our deck, actually gaining credits and getting additional actions. These various actions are incredibly diverse and do all types of different things, so you can really make your deck asymmetric as you staff crew on your ship. Speaking of ships, let's go ahead and jump next to talking about the ship parts that we can collect and how our player board functions. Ship parts are another way that you can add another layer of asymmetry and strategy to your deck as you progress through a game of Moonrakers. Now, ship parts are broken into 4 corporations or types of weapons. You have orange, purple, yellow, and blue weapon companies that are making these various parts for your ship. All of them have a generally similar breakdown. You see on the top right the card or type of cards that are required for that particular weapon or piece to activate. So for instance, if we look at this railgun, it actually needs a miss card. So again, another way that you could utilize a bad card and make it pretty good. In the bottom, you see the brand or company that has made that part, as well as the cost in credits to buy and add that part to your ship. And at the bottom, we have the special text that tells you, once you've met the card requirements, what that piece actually does, what kind of ability it activates on your turn. Each of these can be activated once per turn. You couldn't activate them multiple times, but they offer incredibly powerful abilities that, if you meet the requirements, can change the way that you play a game of Moonrakers quite drastically. When you buy a piece, if you pay the cost in credits, you'll slot that onto your player board, onto your ship. You have 4 ship component locations, and if you ever were to purchase a 5th, you could remove a component from your ship to slot a new component in to its place. But you can only ever have 4 of these active at a time. Since we're talking about your player board, we'll look at it a little bit. It's relatively well laid out. You have an area for your draw, your discard, a place to hold any credits that you would get throughout the game, as well as a reminder as what your basic hand is. Again, that's 3 reactors, 2 thrusters, 2 shields, 2 1 damage cards, and a miss. Of course, as you gain crew or potentially gain bonus cards, you'll have to keep track of those as you play throughout the game, but it's really helpful for a little bit of card counting and a little bit of strategy as you go through a game of Moonrakers to know what you have in your hand and what you could potentially draw as you attempt to complete contracts throughout the game. And that is how you play Moonrakers. I hope you enjoyed getting a little look at how you can jump into this galactic struggle for contract completion, and I hope that this game looked exciting to you. But what did I think of it? Well, as I mentioned at the start, I'm a bit of a sucker for deck builders, and so when I first encountered this game and realized that it was a deck builder with social deduction and bluffing components mixed into it, I was sold. Now, my favorite type of game is a game where you can be diplomatic, a game where you don't necessarily have to be honest, and you can use treachery and trickery to your advantage to win the game. Those are my favorite types of games, and so merging that with deck building was, one, I thought very inventive and a neat take on it. I'd not encountered a game like that before, and also beyond that, it just was a really fun theme and way to approach a social deduction kind of game. Again, games like Secret Hitler and Werewolf, things like that are by far my favorite type of game. And so merging that with deck building was an easy selling point to me to get into the game. But of course, that's only how you get someone in the door. What kept me around was the quality of depth that this game has to offer. Now, as you saw through the tutorial, it's a relatively simple gameplay. Turns are pretty straightforward. I can stay at the base and get some credits and work on my ship a little bit, whatever. But ultimately, you don't want to do that. You want to be going out and getting contracts every turn that you can, whether that's as an ally or as a mission leader. And so turns are pretty straightforward. You're going to look at the contracts that are out there. You're going to look for one that you want to do, you think you can do. You're going to maybe solo it if you're lucky, but mostly you're going to be negotiating with the table. You're going to be offering credits, maybe even prestige. You're going to be offering hazard dice and trying to swindle people into the best deal possible for you as you progress through the game. Now, I had moments where I had objectives that were necessary for completion of, let's say, a certain type of contract, like a delivery contract. So I might have even in times have been like, hey, I'm going to give you a prestige and all the credits if you help me with this mission. And it's kind of showing that I'm desperate, but I was like, hey, I really need this. And so a 2 prestige mission became a 3 prestige mission for me, or what have you. Little things like that where you have some secrets in your objective cards that dictate how you play and what you're trying to accomplish. But predominantly, you're going to be working to get the best deal for yourself through these contracts. And I love the wheeling and the dealing and negotiation and even the backstabbing that can happen at the table. I showcased the card earlier, but there's cards like Saboteur that encourages you to take on missions as an ally and then fail them. So I've seen that happen in games. I haven't been responsible for it, but I've seen it happen where someone will be like, hey, I'll help you. Yeah, I just, I need to knock this out. I'll just take 3 credits. No big deal. Nothing major. And then they'll be on there and be like, no, I don't have any cards to play. And leave you high and dry because that's a thing that you can do. And they'll end up getting a prestige out of it and end up screwing over a player who was maybe really desperate for that contract. And so the treachery and the backstabbiness is actually really engaging and really fun and prevalent throughout a game of Moonrakers, and I like that a lot. Winning is never set in stone. I've seen players in last place jump ahead because people wanted to not kingmake with the person in front, and so ended up over-helping the person in the last place that had some secret objectives, or a big mix of things. And so really having those secret objectives is a big part of the strategy in the game, and how you build your deck through crew cards and ship parts. All of it builds this really nice layered structure. Now, I will say that any kind of a social deduction, social interaction game is just that. It's a social interaction game. So if your group or the table or the people that you're playing with are not necessarily the most fun to interact with socially, or are not into that type of a game, Moonrakers is going to flounder. If this is a game where everybody really likes to just play honestly and open, it can still be engaging, but I think that you're missing out on the fun aspect of the potential for treachery. And so you really do need to have a game group that enjoys that aspect of betraying people and sometimes getting betrayed, and knowing that it's fun, that it's in a game, and that it's all in the sport of a good time. And so that is something to keep in mind. If you don't enjoy getting lied to from time to time, if you don't enjoy that backstabby element, that might be a detraction for you in Moonrakers, because that's certainly a component that I believe is a major aspect of a game of Moonrakers. So keep that in mind as you consider this game. But if you do enjoy bluffing, if you enjoy social interaction games where the truth is not always prevalent or easy to determine, then you're really going to like Moonrakers, because it's literally a deck builder with that on top of it. And so to me, that's just the cherry on top of a delicious sundae. And so I will note Moonrakers is very accessible. It's not hard to teach. It's got a very well laid out player board, main board. It's got very clear contracts and cards. Like, you can know at a glance what type of card it is, what the requirements are. So it's easy to teach. It's easy for new players to jump in and be accessible and learn and understand this game. Games play pretty quick, 45 minutes to an hour. You can chew through a game of Moonrakers, maybe a little longer if you have a full 5-player game. But overall, the game plays very quickly and is enjoyable for a group of people at various skill levels to get in and play. The strategy and depth really comes from how you build your deck as far as crew and chip parts. Everything else is pretty rudimentary, so it's not the most advanced game that I've ever seen, which is fine, because again, the depth and the fun comes from those interactions, not the depth of the rules, which I like. It's a very accessible game. Now, I was fortunate enough to have a Kickstarter Deluxe copy that comes with really fancy metal bits, a few extra pieces, some nice extra bits. There's a comic book that comes with it. It all just looks really cool. It has a great table presence. It's very accessible. It has a unique kind of sci-fi-esque, almost like The Expanse, in my mind at least, look of kind of an art style. And I really like how it all comes together. I think it pops on the table, and it's really, really fun to get played with the right group. So, in my opinion, this is a 7.5 game. It is very fun. It is very clean and clear and easy to teach, but it does need the right group. It can flounder in a group of individuals that don't enjoy that social interaction and that table talk and the wheeling and dealing and marketplace, antics that kind of come with this type of a game. But with the right group, this game is a treasure. It's a blast to play, and I think that you too will really enjoy getting it to the table and seeing what kind of shenanigans you and your fellow captains can get into just as you go throughout trying to complete these contracts. So Moonrakers is really fun. It's a great title. I'm really happy that Ivy Studios got us a review copy. I'm excited for Veiled Fate, their next game that cleared Kickstarter a while ago, and I'm excited to see what games they have coming out in the future. And I'm just very excited for more games that implement hidden agendas, hidden objectives, and that social deduction. So if you're into those types of games, if you like deck builders, then Moonrakers is an easy insta-buy for you. So I hope that this game, or this review, has encouraged you to check out this game, and that you will continue to come to us for your board game review and tutorial needs. So thanks again, and as always, happy gaming. Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Check out some of our other Meeple Mountain content. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is Tyler Williams, signing off.